Welcome to Physics 12. During this course, we're going to use models, often mathematical models, to help us understand a particular set of phenomena, to help us get a language for something that we see that's going on. As always, though, Acacia, I need to point out these models will almost always be wrong. We'll often ignore friction or air resistance. In fact, I may have told you last year, or I'll tell you this year when we get to forces, friction doesn't exist. It's not a real force. Neither is the normal force. But they're good models. They help us explain how things interact, and they allow us to get a handle on what's going to occur and make predictions. They'll be good approximations, Emily. We'll be close. Since our models will be mathematical, good math skills are really going to be helpful. So here is a hopeful review of some math skills. One of the things you have to be able to do almost in your sleep is solve a quadratic equation. But that begs the question, what is a quadratic equation? How can I glance at this and instantly tell that it's a quadratic? What makes a quadratic a quadratic? Alisher. Okay, the squared on the variable. I got to pick your terminal. You said the first number. There's a squared on the variable. A fancy word has degree 2. Cubic would be degree 3. Quartic would be degree 4. So as soon as I see that it's a quadratic, okay, this is not a nice quadratic. There is one type of quadratic that you already learned how to solve in grade 10. If you had this, x squared equals 9. In fact, I taught you last year how to get rid of the squared. Okay, that's technically quadratic. Oh, square root plus or minus, though. Remember, for VF squared equals VI squared plus 2AD, sometimes we had to realize we wanted the negative answer, not the positive one. So that's a quadratic that you already know how to handle. The more complicated quadratics are the ones that have a squared and a linear term, like this one. So, first, recognize it's a quadratic. How do you solve a quadratic? What's step 0? And the reason I always called it step 0 is because it involves a 0. Okay, you got to make the equation equal to 0. So when I taught it, we always called that step 0 as a dumb memory trick. Step 1 is make the equation equal to 0. The easiest way to do that was how? You said move. How would I move the 2 over? Okay, so I would drop down the 5t squared like a domino. I would drop down the 7t. I would plus the 2 over, and on the right, we have a 0. Does anybody remember the quadratic formula? If you haven't memorized, there's a candy in it for you. Yeah? I'll give you a hint. X equals negative. You're reading it. Nice try. But kudos for you for cluing in. It's on the back page of your formula sheet. The back page of the formula sheet is the one that has a whole bunch of data and charts on it and a picture of a triangle. Somewhere there, I think it's on the left side of the page near the bottom, you'll see x equals negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. Let's write that down. Oh, except instead of x equals, what variable do I have here, Daniel? I'm going to say t equals. If you write x equals, I won't take marks off, but I can't write it wrong. I'm very pedantic that way. So it's going to be t equals negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. X equals negative b plus minus square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. Can we say it faster than that? Can we say it backwards? A2 overall CA4 minus square B root square minus plus B negative equals X. The quadratic formula, Ethan, it does make my little math nerd heart sing. When I used to teach math, I called this the iambic pentameter of mathematics, in that it's the only thing like it. It solves equations with a squared. We've had the quadratic formula for about, oh, hang on, I got to pause for a second. Let me pause the video recording. All my students are distracted. We've known about the quadratic formula for about 400 or 500 years, maybe longer. There's variations of it. But once we had this one, and it solves every squared equation, mathematicians asked, hey, is there a cubic formula? Is there a quartic formula? Better yet, is there like a Sauron one ring of power to rule them all? Is there one formula that will solve every polynomial equation? We looked for it, and we looked for it. And it was only in the 1880s, 1890s that it was proved there is not. This is it. This is it. So it's very unique that way. But it leads the question, what do we mean by A and B and C? Don't write this down, look up. I have no problem if you go A equal, what does A equal? I have no problem if you go B, what does B equal? I have no problem if you can do that. I may have occasionally used a phrase with you, lazy but organized. So you can write that down. Alistair, go ahead. Hey, here's what I did. Write this down if you want. That was enough for me to figure out what was what. And I didn't have to rewrite the whole stupid thing. So let's plug in some numbers. What's B? 7. So what's negative B? What if B had been negative to begin with? Okay. So really it's the opposite of whatever B was. There's my negative 7. Plus or minus. You typically get two answers here. The square root of B squared, 7 squared minus 4 times A times C all over 2A. Often, because I can multiply almost anything by 2, I would often do the 2A in my head, because it's the 2 times table. Okay? Those of you that have the built-in solver, use it. Now, if you don't know how to use the built-in solver, but you think you have one, now is your chance to ask. Those of you that don't have the built-in solver, you can start typing if you think you know how to type that in. Otherwise, I'll walk you through it in just a second. This into my calculator, I would say to myself, self, is this a fraction? Yes, it is. Is there more than one thing on the top? I would put a bracket around the top. Negative 7 plus square root. Open up a bracket. Inside the square root is a 7 squared minus 4 times 5 times 2. Close off the square root. Close off the top. Divided by 10. I'll say that again a little slower. Is this a fraction? Yep. Bracket around the top. Then negative 7 plus square root. I got to open up a bracket to put everything inside the square root. 7 squared minus 4 times 5 times 2. Close off the square root. Close off the top. I don't need to put the 10 in brackets. There's where you get the negative 0.4. And then, if you've got a good calculator, Daniel, this is one of the main reasons I told you last year, get one that lets you backspace and edit, because you can change the the plus sign to a minus sign, and you get your second root of negative 1. Is there anybody that could not get that? Okay? There will be questions where you're going to be required to solve a full-blown quadratic. Okay? Did you get that okay, Daniel? Yeah. Okay. Who else does not have the solver? Scott, you don't have a solver, right? Okay, so a few of you. And you don't, and you don't. Okay? So you're kind of my core audience right now. Wow, this is the most solvers. Oh, you know why? Because you all listened to me last year. How many of you used the quadratic solver in your Math 11 classes last year? Because you all had it if you listened to me. Next page. What kind of an equation is this? It's quadratic. How do I know? It's got a squared. Okay. Make it equal to 0. I'm going to minus the 12t from both sides. I'm going to write this as 4.9t squared plus 12t. What's A in this? Plus, Mr. Dewick? Minus 12t. My brain was tapping me on the shoulder saying, dude, you did that sloppily. What's A in this question, Emily? What's B? No. careful. It's not 12. It's not 12. It's not 12. What is it? What's in front of the 12 when you moved it over? Negative 12. Negative 12. Okay? Sorry, I thought you were there. Oh, ooh. What's C? It's a trick question. So there is a C as a number exactly if there is nothing as a trick question. What number is it exactly then? 0, okay? I'm just going to remember that C is 0. If you want to, you can do that. You know me enough to know, will I ever do that? No, I'm lazy but organized. Okay. I always write out the quadratic formula cold first. I always write out negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. Sadie, you've had me before. Do I ever write out unnecessary stuff? So the fact that I'm actually just copying a formula verbatim, even though it's on your formula sheet, tells you I've made so many dumb mistakes with this that I learned the hard way. It's worth writing it out once. Unless you got the solver, by the way. If you got the solver, you're good to go. But those of us that are doing this by hand, only now would I plug in the numbers. Emily, you told me that b was negative 12. So what's negative b? What's negative 12? Are you positive? See, I did that. Okay. 12, good. Plus or minus the square root of negative 12 squared minus 4 times A, 4.9, times C, 0. Ha! That whole term is just going to vanish. All over 2 times 4.9, I think it's 9.8. I probably, if I've been paying attention, could have skipped writing the minus 4ac because I should have said, hey, C is 0, so gone. I get a weird situation here. So I said, is this a fraction, Chico? Yes, it is. Brackets around the top. And I typed 12 plus square root negative 12 squared, close off the square root, close off the top, divided by 9.8. And for some reason, I got an error. For a candy, who can see why I got an error? I understand what you're saying. Can we hard one like that? Now I can understand. I have to put brackets around the 9.8? You're saying if I go like this, now I won't get an error? I disagree. Thank you for playing. Click your console. Alisher. No, it's not squaring a negative number. Am I not squaring that negative? You're correct. Argue with me. No, it's because my calculator is stupid. And I mean that literally. I know that that negative is part of the squared. My calculator does not. How can I show my calculator that it also needs to square that negative? Two ways, okay? One would be to type it like this. Another bracket, negative 12, close bracket, squared, close off the square root, close off the top, divided by 9.8. And that will work just fine. That gives, did you all get a 30? That seems wrong to me. Oh, I missed the 9. Sorry, hang on. I've got a typo. I divided by 0.8. Let's try that again. 9.8. Did y'all get 2.4489 and change? Okay. Have I used the term lazy but organized? You want to know what I would have done? So I would have written this. What happens when I square a negative? I would have said this negative on my calculator is redundant, Kira. It's not going to make a difference. And so what I would have typed was, is this a fraction? Yeah, I would have opened up a bracket. I would have gone 12 plus square root button bracket. I wouldn't have bothered typing in the negative. I would have said negative 12 squared. That's the same as 12 squared. and I get 2.4489. I'll go, oh, what did we decide last year? What do we typically round off to? 3 what? 3 sig figs, so 2.45. Is that all right? That's messy, Mr. Duke. Do it a little neater. Do another one. Okay. What was that? Who didn't get a negative answer? Did I get a negative answer? Oh, I didn't do the second root. I'm sorry. That was dumb of me. Thank you. Candy for you, Sean. I don't know where I was going there. 0. Sean? Did I say Sean or Shane? I said Sean? I don't know why I did that. Maybe it's because you barely made it to class on time. Sorry, Shane. Okay, candy. I promised you a candy. Let me get you your candy. And Alisher, I think I said there was a candy if you figured out why I was getting that error. So candy for you. Okay. Keep going. It says solve. Okay, cool. What kind of an equation is this? How do you know it's a quadratic? It's got a square. All right. What's step 0? Daniel. Make it equal to 0. There's 2 ways I could do that. I could plus the 10 to this side, and I'm fine if you do that. I've done so many of these, I know I typically make dumb mistakes when the quadratic term is negative. So I'm actually going to plus the 4.9 to this side and minus the 12t to this side. I'm doing it all in my head anyways, but it's just a habit. If you're ever wondering, Mr. Duick, why did you rearrange the equation that way? It's because I've just learned I make more dumb mistakes when the quadratic term is negative. So I'm going to write this as positive 4.9 t squared, take away a 12t, and then plus, no, not plus, Mr. Duick, the minus 10 just drops down like a domino, stays where it was. What was that? 4.9 t squared. Thank you. Good point. Thankfully, it wouldn't have mattered in my system because I've also labored to come up with a system that I can make dumb mistakes and not have them make a difference, because I would have said, okay, that's A, that's B, that's C. I would have, again, those of you that have the solvers, you should be about 30 seconds from having the roots. Those of us that are doing this the long way because we're poor peons, it's going to be t equals negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. It's going to be negative 12. Emily said that's a 12. She is correct. Plus or minus the square root of. I'm going to write negative 12 all squared. On my calculator, Acacia, I'm not going to bother putting in the negative because I know it would vanish anyways. Minus 4, running out of room, Mr. Duick, times A, 4.9, times C, negative 10, all over 2 times 4.9. Pretty sure that's 9.8, but I'll let my calculator do it. Those of us that are doing this by hand, is this a fraction, Scott? Yep. More than one thing on the top, bracket around the top. And Declan, then it's going to be 12 plus square root bracket. 12 squared minus 4 times 4.9 times negative 10. Again, I didn't bother typing the negative 12 squared because I know the negative in this situation would vanish anyhow. Close off the square root, close off the top, divided by, open up a bracket, 2 times 4.9 4.9. Close off the bottom. Those of you that have the fancy quadratic solvers, you still do have to make it equal to 0 no matter what. Did you all get 3.10602948? So I'll go 3.11, I guess. Ethan. Okay, don't clear your calculator. But while I have this, before I forget, because I did last time, I'll backspace, change the plus sign to a minus sign, and I'll get the other root of negative 0.657. Let me pause the video. Try, I think this is the last one, try this one on your own. I'll do it up here without talking. I'm going to shrink my screen down a bit so I can get more writing on one page. So if you get stuck, you can look up, but try solving this on your own. Whether you're using the built-in solver. Daniel, can you put your phone face down, please? Thank you. Daniel, can you put your phone face down, please? Thank you. I'm going to go... Negative 4.3 plus the square root of 4.3 squared minus 4 times A times C all over. You got the solver? No, you have to schlep your way there. Ethan, that should work then. This is where that fraction button is also really handy. It's in the quadratic formula. So much nicer. Am I right, folks? Okay. I'm going to continue this lesson tomorrow, but for now, if you want to get a head start, you can do the homework. I think I left room right on this assignment. So if you want to, you can jump to the end where it says question 9 in the homework. Quadratic equations, solve the following. You can try doing 9, A, B, C, and D for practice. And I think I attached the answers at the very, very end there if you're stuck to see if you're doing them right. We'll continue the rest of this tomorrow.